So our next piece is the Palazzo Rucellai by Leon Battista Alberti. So you can just reference him from now on as Alberti. He is pictured in a portrait in the center, and the Palazzo Rucellai is on both the left and the right. So this is a home, and we're going to be talking about it in comparison with other homes that we've seen in the curriculum, like the House of the Veti is coming out as one of those pieces. And then another piece from the past that I will leave until the later on in the video and see if you guys can recognize that as we're going along here. So in terms of how to take notes on this, we'll start with context. And of course, since it's architecture, one of the first things you need to know is location. And so this building is located in the heart of the city-state of Florence. And that's going to be key to part of how the building looks. Rome was going through in terms of the 15th century. And remember, 15th century means the 1400s. So during the 1400s in Florence, you had this time period of great civic pride, just pride in your city state, wanting it to be the best, wanting it to look its best. And so there became this movement to beautify the city. So there was the city beautification project. And the building here was built with that in mind. In fact, when we get to content, I will show you one of the things in this building that is particularly geared toward it being a home in the middle of the city and kind of providing for the citizens of the city, as well as just the beauty in the design too, as being part of that beautification project. Alberti studied in Rome, and so he was definitely studying the classical pieces of Rome that were inspired by Greece and also then the Roman innovations. And so hopefully looking at the building right now, you can see some of the classical elements at play in the particular building, and we will discuss those also when we get to the visual evidence. He was asked to make this or build this from the Rucellai family, who was a wealthy merchant family, a wool merchant, I believe, and they were deeply inspired by and wanted to link themselves visually and associate themselves in terms of their power and status with the most famous family from Florence, which was the Medici family. And so the Medicis had a palace here in Florence that is similar in look. I'm sure Alberti was asked to look at that building for inspiration, or perhaps he just did it on his own, but I will show you that building too later on in the slideshow, and you can see kind of the similarities between the two. Alberti, our artist, besides just studying art in Rome and architecture in Rome, was a writer about architecture and painting in particular. He wrote 2 treatises, and oftentimes College Board expects you to know that. So he is a writer as well as the artist himself. And then besides this building, which was a home, so it's a domestic piece, there was also a building or of a part of a building that was a space really that was built nearby, like adjacent to this, called a loggia, which is one of your vocab terms, and it's a room, this space that will have one or more open sides. So it could have as many as 3 open sides, or it might just have one. And this particular loggia was built for celebrations, and we think, in fact, it was built with a wedding in mind that took place in the 1450s. And so they would have their celebration there. That loggia is still there today, but now it has been enclosed with glass, the open sides, and it's used for stores. in Florence. And I will show you the modern version of that in just a moment. So that's the most important thing with context, where it is. We have a city-state here that is bursting basically with pride and wanting to beautify itself and look the most powerful and the most beautiful of all the city-states of Italy. And we are influenced by the Medici family, again, merchants, the Rucellai merchant family wanting to put their stamp on the city-state and to be linked to the Medicis. And so you have a building that looks very similar to a palace built for the Medicis earlier. And now, content. I don't know if you were thinking of this, but if you were like, this kind of reminds me of the Colosseum, you are spot on. So that's primarily our number one kind of attribution to make from the past. Going back, Alberti in Rome, he saw the Colosseum with the different orders of columns and then a pilaster section up at the very top attic level of the Colosseum. If you look at the facade of the palace, you've got your kind of Italian Tuscan columns. You've got a kind of a modified Corinthian column, or even you can almost say a modified Ionic column, I suppose. And then up on top, another type of Corinthian column. So I would say the middle layer, though, is more of a modified kind of Corinthian column. So different orders, though, but not columns this time. We have pilasters, which again are those flat, squared off, engaged piers. And they are the same in terms of being pilasters on all the different levels. Alberti is a stickler for making sure the building or his art is unified. He would not put engaged columns down at the bottom and then pilasters on the second and or third floor. That just wouldn't be a unified design. So you have pilasters on all the different levels. That harmony of design, I think, is a great phrase to put in for content for Alberti, the harmony or unity of the design elements. Again, one more time, the harmony or unity of the design elements. Now, second, while I just said that, the harmony and unity of design elements, there are some times, though, when your attribution to a building in the past and you're wanting to make the building look a certain way makes you maybe deviate from that just a smidge. So the stones on the bottom level are bigger than the stones on the second level. And then both those levels are bigger stones than the third level is. But they are all the same square or rectangular shaped stones. So that unifies the different levels. But by having the different sizes of stone, through ashlar masonry, you then create the sense that the building is taller than it actually is. So that's another kind of hallmark to or attribution back to the Colosseum, trying to make the building look taller than it is through some visual tricks, and that's one of them. Classical influences, definitely the Roman arches that you see in the second and third level, the geometry and the clarity of design, the simplicity. There's not a lot of fluff here. There's not a lot of ornamentation. It's very simplified. And so that, I think, would be a very Roman style characteristic. Your entrances on the first floor. Let's talk about the first floor. The first floor has, and I have this purple arrow pointing to it, you have a bench across the entire facade that the citizens of Florence were expected and hopefully would take advantage of. They would sit on that during the day. And so you could go out, let's say, get your gelato. It's hot in Florence, so you go and you're tired and you sit on this bench outside this family's home and you enjoy your treat and your rest. So that's part of like the sense of beautifying and also kind of just improving the life of the people of Florence in the city. And so that bottom floor was for business. So that bottom first floor was the business of the Rucellais, and you have that post and lintel portal or doorway. And to keep that in harmony on the first floor, you have the square kind of windows or open spaces leading into and providing light to the shop space. So that whole first floor is unified. Once you get past that first floor, you see this huge, and the blue arrows are pointing to this long horizontal band that runs across the entire facade. That is called a string course. It's a decorative horizontal band that separates the stories of this building. And for this building, it has, on the upper band, it has these sails, and that's for the Rucellai family. And then the lower string course have feathers, and that is a symbol of the Medicis. So again, linking the Rucellai family to the Medicis, power by association. And then at the very top level, you've got the cornice or the roof line that extends out and kind of just brings that growing sense of vertical that you've created with the pilasters and the changing size of the stones. That cornice or roof just stops that and really provides this great punctuation mark to the building. So then I talked a little bit about that first floor is for business. The second floor and story would be where the Rucellais would receive guests. The third level is the family living space. And then the cornice level that you're seeing, it hides actually a fourth story, which is where the servants would be and would live. The highest point, the most difficult to get to, no windows, that's where the servants would be. So that's kind of a description of some of the attribution, which definitely Rome, I would say primarily, with the arches that you see in the second and third level, the geometry and clarity of the design, the unity of the design, for sure. The hearkening back to the Colosseum, absolutely. And just the civic mindedness, the design for your citizens, thinking beyond yourself with that bench down below. That's a very Roman thought. It's sacrifice of the self for the good of the whole. And it's not that they're sacrificing anything here, but yet they're mindful of everyone who experience this space and providing a space for people. All right. And so then moving on, I have another vocab term I wanted to isolate a little bit. You can see some of the string course there with the relief sculpture. But above that, with the arch that you see that frames the window, you've got these wedge-shaped stones that are set together to form the arch. Those, you have this French word for it called voussoir. And so each individual stone is a voussoir. And that is, I think, a vocab term that you should be aware of. It's not the be-all, end-all word, but it's definitely an important one. And then on the left-hand side, you have a close-up of the loggia, which is, I think, now a shoe store, but at some point it was a sound equipment store. But you can see the great Roman arches that kind of end and meet in these wonderful Corinthian columns, and then the ginormous pilasters on the ends. That would be the loggia that had close to maybe kitty corner from the actual palace, and this would be where those celebrations would be held. And then I put a little close-up of the facade so you can see some of the great stonework, the bench, what it really looked like. I like the persons there so you could get a sense of scale as well. And then this particular slide is just showing you the Palazzo Medici, the Medici palace that I think Alberti and the Rucellais were inspired by. And you can see the different levels and the the different stones, but it's slightly different. And then you have really kind of natural looking stone down at the bottom, and then more like that ashlar masonry dressed stone on the second level. And then you can barely see that there are individual stones on the third level. So there are differences for sure, but it definitely can show you the visual inspiration for the Rucellai family when they were having Alberti create this design. So Alberti, incredible architect, important architect in the Renaissance, one of the most important actually, and unity of design, the harmony of the elements in the art piece, having that all the things relate to each other in that harmony, I think is the overriding issue that you want to associate with Alberti.